All right. Well, welcome band members. Obviously, badass newer division managers. Excited for our next call. We've got Ryan Supplee now that's going to be delivering the goods on working with assistant manager staff and development. We're in the midst of the Jan program, multiple people on here with 40 plus set for the big dance and the training. Many of us just knocking out P-Banquet, which is super exciting. And of course, only a few weeks left with our 53-week calendar year till we join the 2020 vision and go after our best years ever. So thank you guys for making the time today. I am very excited about the message that Ryan's going to deliver. I know he's worked with Trent Booth on putting it together, worked with John Wasserman on getting the right things. And then we also had a quick call on just making sure he delivered the goods. But a veteran just got married and moving into 2020 with a possible division manager promotion looming. So thank you for putting your preparation into this. I am all ears, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I just love when these calls happen, just because I feel like I'm thinking big, and then I hear some of the stuff you guys talking about. I'm like, $2 million a year, having 47 set for next week. I'm like, man, I gotta think bigger, and I just can't wait to learn more from you guys. But getting into my talk, so I'm going to talk about two things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is developing a Dom, and also creating a large pool of candidates every single year. So I spent a lot of time, like Nick said here, thinking about a way that I wanted to create and deliver this message. And the hardest part was actually deciding on how to deliver it because, until I spoke with John Fiacco, I was battling with myself on the idea of how am I supposed to teach people that have done this longer than me and things that we already kind of know? How am I supposed to teach these things? And he gave me the idea of, instead of teaching, just explain, just share stories. So I have a lot of stories in here that I would love to share with you guys. And because we can always learn lessons through stories, things that, this message isn't going to be a how you're going to do this. It's going to be a more of a, hey, these are some ideas that have really helped John Wasserman in his 28 years in the business develop, just killer divisions. So instead of teaching something new, I simply wanted to just talk about my experience personally too. I know I've never developed a Dom, but I have replaced myself twice, two of John's Doms, and I also was John's Dom for 2 years and a pilot before I was DM. So here are a few things that I hope you take away from my message. So first is really just to kind of give clarity in current programs and standards that you might already have. Many of the stories I'm going to tell will hopefully strengthen some of the ideas you already have in terms of what you're looking for in a Dom and what you do. And then some of these things might be reminders. The famous saying is, it worked so well, I stopped doing it. Hopefully some of these stories are going to be things that, as you move into the new year and you start looking for your next pilot or Dom, what am I looking for, and what are things that I used to do that I stopped doing that can really help my business? The second thing I'm going to talk about is helping stir up ideas of things to do and not to do. Very clear. I talked to Nick about this a little bit yesterday, and I got some more stories from John this morning at lunch on what do you do when you go away and they totally tank, or things like that. So hopefully they'll stir up some ideas of things to kind of think about, because this also not only affects your Dom and pilot, but however you handle your Dom or pilot leads back to your assist managers that they're helping develop with you. So the way you handle things really matters. So I'm going to try to help you strengthen your current and future relationships with a larger pool of candidates to choose from. And lastly, as you move into the new year, hopefully by the end of the talk, this will help give more clarity in how to choose and who to choose as your pilot or Dom. So let's dive right in. I wanted to give a little bit of a history of me and John before I start. This way it gives more weight to the things that I'm going to be talking about. So a little bit about Was, if you haven't learned much about him, or maybe you have, this is just some clarity. He's a 2-time Silver Cup winner. The first time was in 1999 when he got married to his wife the same year. And then the second time he won a Silver Cup was the same year he had his first son. So the 2 years, very difficult, he said, but he pulled it out at the end. And he was also the first one in Northeast region history to do $1 million in sales in just the summer. And 897,000 of it was new business, when new business was cut off at 15K. So practically, with today's standards, $1 million summer in new business. Lastly, 3 of his pilots that worked with him personally over a 3-year span, every single one of those pilots, 3 of them, David Kirkner, Greg Cothran, and Elijah Cheeks, all got promoted to DVC the same year. 2 of them went on to becoming DVMs. And I think John was the first one in company history to promote 3 DVMs out of his office in 1 year, or out of his division in 1 year. So a little bit about my time with John. I started in 2012 as John's pilot, went through Leadership Academy, became a head AM in 2013. And that's when me and John's relationship really started, and where I started to learn and pick up a lot of the things that he does, how he says things, how he treats his people. He named me pilot in the fall of 2013 because of the way I treated people and how I helped them produce more sales for themselves. That's why he promoted me in 2014 to DM, even though I had never run an office before. And that first summer, I launched 44 people, and my PPR was 3,500 with those 44. 10 of them were between 10 to 15,000, and one of them was over 30K. All of them were very excited, went to Olean. Some of them went through Leadership Academy, never branched though. But I also had 3 10K fast starters in those first 8 months. So that story will come back into play when I go over like what to look for in your Dom or pilot. So anyways, John called me after that first summer. At the end of those 8 months, I ran the January program, had another 10K fast starter then, and he called me in February and asked me to close down my office and come back to be his pilot, or his Dom, for 2 years, from spring of 2015 to 2017. And, obviously I didn't hesitate. I was like, absolutely, especially because my parents and family all live in the territory he was running. I thought it was going to be a great opportunity. So I agreed. And also that same year he asked me to come back in 2015, it was the year he promoted all 3 of those DVCs. So he needed to rebuild his division because those 3 were all $1 million shippers. And so his his division just dropped $3 million per year. So he needed somebody that knew what they were doing to take over. And so I guess my first Wasserman tip is never have a 2-year Dom. Now it's really up to you. John hates it. So after doing it twice, he will never, ever do it again. And again, the option's up to you, but after me came Austin Craig, and Austin Craig and I, between those 4 years, I promoted 2 DMs for John in those 2 years, and Austin didn't promote any DMs in those 2 years. So he really lost a lot of, pilot development, a lot of branches, but not enough DMs coming out of the pilot. We're actually it feels like we're a couple of years behind where we should be at this point. So he doesn't like the 2-year Dom because he feels that at the second year, the Dom becomes too comfortable and doesn't know what it feels like to have an off month or an off campaign, and having that keeps him sharp, keeps him hungry and things like that. So he thinks after a year, they become too comfortable. Okay. So that's some of the backstory that'll help explain why John and I do what we do in our division. So this message isn't just going to be about WAS stories, but I do think out of 28 years in the business, there's a lot to learn from him and things that I do personally myself. I've promoted in my career of 3 years as a district, 13 branches in 2 districts. And I currently have 15 in Leadership Academy right now. 5 are returning branches that have branched twice already. So they're senior branches. Actually, one of them is Everett Burns. He was a 2-time national top branch, over 300K both summers. And he's actually going to be opening up a district in Kyle's Preeman's division now. So Kyle just got a new part of a division, Long Island. So he's going to be opening up there. And then the second one is actually John's current Dom, who's going to be opening up as a district in Chester County this coming year. And if I play my cards right this year, I could be looking at 3 district managers, 6 branches and 6 assistant managers going into next summer. And so we're actually going for the Silver Cup district team. We're going to go for $2 million as a district team for next year before I get promoted. So, well, I'm hoping that that's what will get me promoted. So, but what helped lead up to all of this? So, like, what do we do in our division that helps us make sure every year we always have a large pool of candidates and have a solid DOM in place to help the rest of the division? So number one, let's start with clarity on programs and standards. The mistakes that many DVMs make, even veteran DVMs, everybody wants a super kick-ass DM that's going to do everything for them. And they can manage most of their office from home all the time. That's just not the reality of how a business should be run. Why would you run a business that you never want to be at? That's not a business I want to start, right? Why would you never want to be there? And so the DVM should be more involved in the development of the pilot than any other office in the entire division. A quote I heard was, "So goes the pilot, so goes the division." And so John mentioned to me that it's funny when people joke about him being semi-retired and golfing 4 days out of the week and only coming in on Mondays for a couple hours each week. Now, there is some truth to that, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that he does behind the scenes that you wouldn't even realize that really helped him become a master of this DOM program. So here's what he's mastered. He's mastered leading the DOM to believe that they're doing everything without him. And he doesn't even know. They have no idea. He's also become the master of making the DOM feel like they have complete ownership of everything in the office. And that everything in the office is all they're doing. He's just there to pay the bills. He makes that joke so much. I'm the best trained assistant manager you'll ever have, and I'm just here to pay the bills. It's your office. I'm just here to pay the bills. See, somebody once told John that you're not allowed to leave your office until you have a 100K week. Well, at least you're not allowed to leave your office in the hands of others until you have a 100K week, is what he said. And so by doing so, by letting the DOM have full ownership of the business and making them feel that way. And I'm going to talk about, like, how do you get them to feel that way? Because we've all had assistant managers like, I wish they cared more about the office than they currently do. Or I have a pilot that, I wish they cared more about the development of our office than they really do. But by giving the DOM the confidence, they go into the next year feeling like they're this top baller DM about to open, be the number one when they open. And that's the feeling John gives them as he's like, this is the training that you're getting and the vision. So I'm going to talk a little bit about vision in a little bit. So the question to ask is, how do I make my pilot or DOM feel like they're the DM and you're just there to pay the bills? How do you give them the feeling of full ownership? We're going to get into that. So a couple of ideas and stories that led up to this. We truly believe that it starts with choosing the right candidate. Secondly, it's making your expectations clear from the beginning. And then lastly, selling the vision of themselves, being on stage and making a name for themselves in the region. Like, how are we going to shock the region? So the right candidate, right expectations, selling the vision. So let's start with choosing the right candidate. So earlier I told you about my first summer launching 44 and 3,500 PPR. John taught me, and this is something I'm going to take with me forever, is that it is significantly harder to teach productivity than it is to teach how to recruit more. It is significantly harder to teach productivity. See, if somebody can recruit a lot of people, but they don't sell anything, you have so much more work on your hands because you have a whole division to care about. Like, it's not that you don't want to work with them, but you've got a lot of other things going on. But when you have somebody that can't teach, like can't do the productivity part of the business, you have to check their PDI calls. You got to check their PCs, their team meeting agendas, their first weekend pop. Like, you got to check a lot of different programs to see where's the cutoff. Like, and that's just harder to teach. And it takes a lot more of, our time. However, recruiting is simpler to teach because all you have to teach is how to create more touches. You don't have to be a super genius to create more touches. You don't have to say the right things to create more touches. The only thing you do have to teach, so for me, I just didn't recruit a lot. He could teach me that because all he had to teach me is the work ethic, right? How to create more touches and a few interview tips to get show to day one. That's it. And that's all he needed to teach me. Productivity is something I knew. It just came natural. And so this may not be how you currently choose your pilot or Dom, but this is what's helped for our division for the past 10, 15 years. And another thing to keep in mind is we have figured out, or I guess John has mastered figuring out very quickly what your candidate is very bad at without telling them, like, this is what you're bad at, obviously. So, for example, when Austin Craig was chosen as the pilot back in 2013, I was the head AM. John found out that Austin was very, very bad at training, like very, very bad. He basically just launched them to their death. If they did make it to advanced training, he had no problem retaining them for the rest of the summer. So it wasn't a retention problem. It was a first weekend pop problem, right? So very quickly he found out that Austin wasn't good at training first weekend pop. So for the first 6 weeks of the summer, he went back into his office after not running training for 7 years, right? He went back into his office and ran training every single week with Austin, right? He made sure he got back in there, ran it with him all 5 weeks of May and the first week of June. And it was a big inconvenience to his schedule, but it drastically improved his results. Austin's first weekend average went from 300 to 750 within those 6 weeks. And then Austin, by the end of the summer, his first weekend was 800 to 1,000 for most weeks. And so that was just from those couple of weeks of just going in, not even running everything, but just going in and figuring out what are they bad at, how can I help them, and just that one thing. Okay. Now, here's where standards come into play. It's one thing to teach it, but how do you maintain that? How do you make sure that they're fully engaged and really learning? So Austin was 4 weeks in, feeling good about learning his training. I remember being in that training May week 4, right after I got back from finals. And I remember sitting in that training, watching John run training, and Austin and I are sitting in the back. And Austin had just completed the day 2 demo, like where you go over prices, and John walked back up to do the post-demo value talk. And Austin hopped on his phone instead of taking notes. And John was doing his post-demo value talk and very calmly walked to the back of the room without skipping a beat, reading his notes, grabbed Austin's phone, walked back to the front of the room, put it in the drawer, slammed the desk, and just continued. Not a single person said anything. Nobody was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? The training group pretty much had no idea. They were like, why did you just slam that drawer? He had no idea that he just grabbed the phone. And from then on, Austin knew, man, he's very serious about me learning and getting good at this. And he explained to him afterwards, hey, the reason I did that, don't ever, and he always says, don't ever do something without explaining afterward why you did. Well, normally you'd explain beforehand, but he explained afterwards why he was taking time out of his day to make sure he was really good at this thing and how, you got to really pay attention. Still to this day, I'm almost 8 years in the business. Still to this day, when John's talking, I'm actually afraid to check my phone sometimes. It's like that, like as a new AM, when it comes to developing a large pool of candidates, your assistant managers will remember that. So every time I watched Austin's training while I was an AM, I was never on my phone because I never knew when John was just going to randomly pop in. And I was really nervous about that. And that helped establish the standards, right? So the way you leave your office and the way you carry yourself really mattered. Now, for people like Dan Villagra, so I don't know if you've ever heard this name, Dan Villagra, back in the day, Cherry Hill, took over after, I forget what his name is, but anyways, his show percentage for training was really, really bad. Like 20% show to training. Like it was really, really bad. So the entire first month of May, the entire month, John's a huge advocate that when you choose a new pilot, you need it takes a couple of weeks to become a well-oiled machine, meaning he spends most of May with the pilot doing like whatever they're really bad at with them, like that one thing, right? And so every single interview, every single day, John would run the first one. After the interview, he would sit down with Dan Villagra, have him role play the next part of the script, right? Just one section. And then he would watch Dan Villagra run the entire next interview. Even though this is May, really important recruiting time, John didn't care because he knew the high school pop was gonna matter, right? And so he did this every single day for the entire month of May. Dan Villagra went from a 20% show to a 50% show for the rest of the summer, once he really mastered it with him. And on the days that nobody showed for his interview, John would watch and say, all right, grab 3 trophies and sit them in your chairs and do the interview with them exactly how I taught you. And without fail, he made sure he ran that second interview, even if nobody showed, and made sure he really nailed his interview, okay? For myself personally, when I became John's pilot and Dom, I had a really hard time with the receptionist program. Now, I know it's evolved over the past couple of years, but with receptionists and recruiting, I couldn't hire them faster than they were quitting. So me personally, I was really, really good on the phones. And so with that said, it was really hard for me to teach. It's kind of like when a professional athlete becomes like a good baseball, becomes a baseball coach or a basketball coach. If they were highly skilled in the sport, sometimes it actually makes them more difficult to teach people because they're just naturally talented at it, and other people just don't get it. So I was really good at the phone script. So I couldn't understand why people couldn't be good on the phone scheduling people for interviews. So John personally sat down with me for every single receptionist meeting every single week and made sure he sat down and did the receptionist meeting every single week, went over the numbers, broke it down with them, and then he would have them role play one section of the script, right? And then he had me do it, right? And then he watched me do it a couple of weeks in a row. And so after that, the final test, right? He actually had 2 of his nephew, or he had a niece and a nephew that just graduated high school. And he says, they're going to be your new receptionists. And he says, because they're family, they better be the best trained receptionists. They cannot quit. They have to be the best trained receptionists you have ever trained, right? So don't half-ass their training. Can I count on you? You can count on me. Anyways, I'm really good friends. Their names are Tarek and Maddie. I'm like super good friends with them. We're like BFFs now. And so they wouldn't mind me sharing their stories. Tarek's reading skills were terrible. In John's family, dyslexia is very hereditary. I'm pretty sure Tarek had it. And when we had him call PRs, he could barely read the script. 18% show his first week, 20% show his second week. It was killing me. I knew John in the back of his head. I remember sitting down with him and he says, I don't care how bad he is right now. You need to make him great. Maddie, on the other hand, was extremely good at reading, but she was like that soft whisper, like, hey, nice to, right? And she was like a whisper on the phone, was not confident with her voice. And she was getting like 25% shows, but they were probably the 2 worst I've ever had start. And I was like, how am I supposed to take them from here to there? But John made sure his standard was, just like I said, you need to make them great. I don't care how they read, whatever, you need to make them great. Just do exactly what I taught you. Have the weekly receptionist meeting, have them role play stuff. So every single day I role played and things like that. But it was just the way John's standards were. They were very clear. They were very concise. He never wavered in the way he wanted things to be run. And that's just important to understand when, after you've chosen the right one, how you set up the expectations in the beginning when they first start that matters through the rest of their career. And by the way, those 2 ended up being still to this day the best receptionists I've ever trained. And they loved it so much, they ended up selling Cutco at the end of the summer, both hitting their first promotions. So to summarize, establishing the right standards, simply showing your staff how you want things run the first month of the summer and finding out what they're bad at the beginning, and helping them get good at it so they can take over so you can focus on the rest of the division, right? Now, he never just stopped showing up. Here is another WAS tip that he loves, is just randomly show up. Like days that you weren't even planned to be in, you know, it doesn't have to be every week, right? He would just randomly show up at different times every single week throughout the month, right? And, you know, sometimes I wasn't doing the things I was supposed to be doing, and he would catch it. And he would correct it. And if I was doing something really well, this was huge for me and my confidence, is obviously when WAS shows up and your division manager, like, you know, I was terrified when he would show up. I was like, man, I don't want to mess up, things like that. He would make sure he left me a little note on my desk of things that I'm doing really well, things to be thinking about. And he would always write the question at the end that always mattered. Anything I can do for you, let me know, right? And so he would always compliment something I'm doing right. So side note, when you have a new Dom or pilot that, even if they've run a branch or run a district, things like that, never assume they know what they're doing. Never assume they know what they're doing. So doing all the little things for them at the beginning of the campaign is huge. So again, you don't have to do it this way, but the way John did it is he would do sample consignment, receptionist payroll, rope, leather, blue books, make sure the checks were mailed up each week. He did that for the first month. And without fail, he always showed up to his office every single Monday at noon to 4. Every Monday, noon to 4. So he knew when my interviews were. So from noon to 1, we would chat. From 1:15 to 3, I had an interview, right? And then at 3 o'clock was advanced training. So he always got to meet the advanced training group on Mondays. And so without fail, he would come in, he would do receptionist payroll, make sure everybody gets their signed check, and he would also pay me too. What he did is every single Monday, he would say things I'm doing well, things, one thing, not a lot, but one thing to think about, to work on for the week. And then he would teach me something new. Let me teach you how to do blue books. Let me teach you how to order those. Here's what's too much money to spend on my account. Here's what's not enough, right? Another week he would say, hey, have you ever written checks before? He would delegate writing the checks out for the receptionist. And his thing was, if you mess up on a check, it's $25. So don't mess up. It was making sure I was doing it properly, the right way every single week, so he could do his taxes properly every single year, right? And he explained the importance of it. So it wasn't just like, here, let me show you how to do this. And then he would explain why he was having me do it. And eventually by the end of the summer, I had everything down. So by the time fall hit, he didn't have to do anything. And that's why his falls are always super open, and why he's able to golf 4 days out of the week, because he was teaching me throughout the whole summer, little things, bits and pieces every single Monday, right? And he also loved to say hi to the training group. So I'm going to be moving into like, how do you give full ownership? Like, how do you make them feel like they're if he's showing up, obviously everybody knows he's the one writing the checks, but how do you make the receptionist staff, or how do you make the assist managers and the people in training, how do you make them feel like, you're the manager, not John, So the way he introduced himself really mattered. So he would make sure from 3 to 4, when the advanced training group, he would come in, introduce himself. And this is the most underrated part of developing your Dom. After choosing the right candidate and establishing the standards, how do you give them the feeling of they don't need you anymore? Like at one point, I remember telling John, like, dude, stop showing up. This is my office, right? Like, I actually said that to him. And eventually he moved to pilots. I'm actually still in Bucks, where I was running his Dom, and I just kicked him out, it's eventually I had the confidence to just be like, John, this is my office. You're showing up too much. You can't be here, right? So this is probably one of the most underrated parts, but there's a bunch of little things. First off, it was the expectation going into the summer and the role he was going to play. So being very clear in the role you're going to play in the office, not just what obviously I know what I was going to be doing, but you should be explaining to your pilot or dom the role you're going to be playing in the summer. Like, how are you going to be impacting the office? Not how they're going to do stuff. It's how you're going to do stuff. Okay. So making it really clear. So he said, first off, I want to let you know, I'm going to be your best trained assistant manager you've ever had. Right? I am the owner. I pay the bills, unless you want to do that too. No? Okay. So I'll just be the best trained assistant manager that pays all your bills for you. And making sure that every single time I come in, I'm impacting your people in a really positive way. Like, you're going to want me to be here more often, but you can't afford me to be here more often. And it was just being very clear. And I was like, okay, great. And he goes, my name's going to be on everything, on reports and things like that too, but realize, like, hey, it's your office. Even though it's going to say John Wasserman, just pretend like my name's not there. Your name's there. Okay. And another thing, letting me use his office, not the side assistant manager office. Like, his main office was my office. And I just replaced our name tags. I put mine there and put his somewhere in the closet. So, and so little things like that, he would just do that. He'd be like, I should probably move this. And he would, like, put it away and things like that. And so it's just a lot of little things. But here's how he introduced himself to every single person that came to our office. He would introduce himself. Hey, nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so. I'm the owner. Build rapport, obviously get to know them, make some type of connection. Oh, you're from Abington? Oh, that's so cool. I was actually born in Abington Hospital. And they're like, oh yeah, like, make some type of connection, normal things you would do. Well, I've actually got some work to do, but I just wanted to make sure I made it a point to come out and introduce myself, obviously, as the owner. But I do want to let you know, you are in such great hands here. Ryan is one of the best trained managers in our entire company. He would say this every single week to every single person. So we know you're in great hands. You're going to be one of the best trained sales representatives this company has ever seen. I'm really excited. We know you're going to be great here. And there's a reason why I personally chose him to be our office manager, because he's one of the best in the business. And I'm really excited for you to be able to work with him. So I'm just here to pay the bills. Haha. Right. However, if accepted into our Leadership Academy program, I'm sure Ryan will cover that with you later. And always plug in those little things that I should be thinking about. If you're accepted into our Leadership Academy program at the end of the summer, you'll actually have an opportunity to work with me closer. So, once I know your name, that you're going to do some big things here in the company. But so you're going to interview at the end of the summer for Leadership Academy. Ryan will cover that more with you later, but I'm really excited to work with you later down the line in the summer. And that helped with retention. They're like, what's this Leadership Academy thing, right? And I didn't even realize how important that was when I was the dom. I was like, oh yeah, Leadership Academy. But he knew that it was going to help with retention throughout the entire summer. So, but it was not just that Leadership Academy thing. It was just like little things every single time that he would just say that were little hints and reminders of things that I should talk to people about. He was like really good at sneaking in something that I should be talking about to the people that are in front of me right now that I might not have been thinking about already. So, and another thing was the way he introduced me at division meetings and conferences. See, a lot of times the region, they'll put up like, so-and-so won the trophy or whatever on the screens or whatever, but he made sure he made it a point to tell Earl, hey, they're the manager, right? Like, so anything that's going to have my name should just have their name on it, And so SC2, Olean, year-end banquet, all sorts of stuff. He would have me stand on stage to receive the trophy, and we would do like, hey, my name's Ryan Supplee. I'm the manager of the Bucks County office. I'm here with, and then he would still stand with the assistant managers, which was always so funny. I'm here with, and then the assistant managers would say their name, and then he'd be in the back, Paul Spangler. It's an inside joke thing that he always says, and it's a like old thing, but he would just stand in the back, and everybody's like, that's not Paul Spangler. Who is that? Right? And but he made sure he stood at the very, very back to let us know, hey, it's our office. We did all that work. And so little things like that started with division meetings and, all that stuff. Because he's like, I have too many trophies. I don't even know what to do with all of them. So, And so he would let me have all the prizes too, TVs, little things like that. Just like things that would make me feel like I was doing the work to earn these. There was only one thing that he didn't let me have over the, 2 years I was his dom, and it was the big green egg for grill. So he took that one. But other than that, I got all the other stuff. I was like, that's such a good prize. But even other little things like Facebook posts. I don't know if you guys have like a region Facebook, page or things like that, but every time they would say John Wasserman, he would just tag it and say, just a simple correction, Ryan Supplee actually. And, great job, you and the Bucks County team. And like every little post, any shout outs, even region calls, John Wasserman's office. And he would say, actually Ryan Supplee, right? And he would make sure that he made it a point to make sure that I was the one getting the credit. He took no credit for anything that was done in the time that I ran the office. In terms of financial ownership, so here's one of the biggest draws that I think really helps John have high quality, pilots and DOMs is the financial. Now, I don't know how your guys' divisions are doing based off the numbers you're telling me. They're pretty solid. So, but it is a pretty hefty financial, thing. I don't know how everybody else does it, but obviously the 3%, but he also wrote out a $300 check every single week. So he pays $300 a week. Now, other division managers that I've heard, like Kyle and Kate Vassy and things like that, they pay $1,000 a month. But I think the $1,000 at the end of each month is just not consistent enough, right? Personally, like talking to the other pilots, they all set, like all the other DOMs in our region was like, oh, you're so lucky to work with John. He paid you better type of thing. But it really gave me a lot of confidence to go out and do all the work. So $300 a week. And then my second year, he upped it to $350 a week. And at one point I actually sat down with him and said, I think I'm worth more, and got him to $400 a week type of thing. Cause I was doing like a 1P banquet for him for the first time in like 15 years. So I said, I think I'm deserving of more. And he's like, I like people that ask for what they deserve. And so, that was the thing, is we sat down and he gave me a financial plan. He didn't just say, here's what's going to happen. He gave me a financial plan. Like he helped me plan out how I'm going to do it. He asked me about my debts, things like that. We really got into like some of the bills and things that I owed, college debt, stuff like that, car, and showed me like how this is going to significantly improve my life financially too. So that way I had that security blanket of explaining to my parents like why I was going to be, working with John, why I'm closing down my office, things like that. He gave me the option, by the way, this is something you can decide, I guess. He gave me the option of being a W-2 or a 1099. I chose 1099 personally, and I think that's how he just continued to do it. It just made it easier for tax purposes. But I do 1099. And so when I have my own DOM, I'm planning on having a pilot this summer. That's how I'm probably going to do it too. But I'm not going to be doing $300 a week like he was. It's going to be something different. I haven't decided with him. But I think having that weekly pay, also was able to be that thing. I'll get into that in a little bit, but I also got a 1K bonus. I'm not sure how every region does it, but there's a 1K bonus for hitting 15K new for the month. For the pilots, I'm pretty sure that's pretty standard. But we also split any region contest prizes. So anytime there was a contest, like if you schedule X amount of PRs, or if you get this many scheduled, or even like recruiting bonuses, like launch bonuses and stuff like that, he would split those with me, like launch bonuses, things like that. So if we launched 20, I don't know how it all, whatever. But he would automatically add it to the check. So I didn't have to figure out what was added. He would just do that for me. So when he came in on Mondays, he figured out how much was added to his commission on Fridays for the contest, and then he would add it to my Monday's paycheck. So it gave him the weekend to kind of figure out the math behind it, and he would just add it to my check automatically. So also when it comes to buying stuff, John didn't use any of his credit cards or anything to like buy like, copies from Staples, or like he had me actually buy everything, and then he would reimburse me so I could use it as a tax write-off. Because I was being 1099 from John's Fast Start LLC. He actually, had me pay for everything, and then I was able to write it off as a business expense at the end of the year. So that also helped me for tax purposes pay a lot less. And then here's another one is any trophy you win, you get to keep for your own office. When it came to promotion bonuses, if I can launch 5 offices out of the pilot that year, I get to keep one of those branches to tab for me. And if there was a district out of those 5, I would get a 1K bonus. But it had to be 5, definitely. So if I launched 5, I got to keep one of them, and if one of them was a district, I would get a 1K bonus out of the promotion bonus. That he just wrote a check out for it and gave it to me. So, but again, these are just some ideas I just want to throw out there, things that John does that like really. So to kind of give you an idea of like how much did I make as a Dom for 2 years. So in 2015, 48,000 if you added up my 2 1099s. And then for 2016, it was 53,000. And by the way, that's, I think that was after taxes, actually, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember what I calculated those off of. Maybe not before taxes, but what I did do is I had $8,000 saved. So John made sure that 1% of my 3% was being held for those 2 years. And then he also made sure that 10% of my monthly bonuses was saved. So financially, I already had $10,000 in my 1% withholding and my 10% monthly bonus withholding. I had $10,000 saved. That's not even including my tax withholding. If you added my other tax withholding, I had another $8,000. And so I had $18,000 to open my district with, plus the company's 15K bonus, or 15K. I know it's not given right away, but so John explaining to me, when you reopen, imagine starting the business instead of having 3K like the first time you did it, having 30K. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So he gave me this financial plan on how it was going to benefit me long term, with the expectation I was going to redistrict. Like it wasn't like a, yeah, let's do this so you can possibly next summer find a different job. It was like this is to relaunch you into a district type of thing. So, so those are most of the little tips, I guess, or little things when it comes to building and creating a Dom. Hopefully that'll help you with choosing and training your Dom for 2020. For the second part of my talk, I wanted to cover, am I out of time? I just realized.
Yeah, we normally go for an hour. So,
wow, I had like 5 more pages. Oh my gosh.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've got 5 minutes in my schedule if I need.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what time was. I just realized.
Yeah, no worries.
I could keep going.
This is good stuff, by the way.
Great stuff so far. Obviously, it's on recording, so I mean, I'll let it keep rolling, and if you want to, kind of wrap it up and deliver the other goods, I think it'd be worth it to have on here.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just keep talking, and if you guys hop off, I'll just keep talking so you can watch it later. But I have some great stuff I was really excited to share. So, so I guess, yeah, you can skip, I guess, a minute there for anybody watching the recording. So for the second part of my talk, I wanted to cover a few miscellaneous things that we do in our division that I find very unique. When it comes to creating a large pool of candidates, I split it up into 2 categories: to-dos and not to-dos. So I have 3 things to do that work very well. So these, I'm going to start with the to-dos and then the not to-dos. So first, weekend PDI. So Buddy actually mentioned this on the last call. I actually love that tip that you gave on like talking to the parents on the first PDI call. That was fire. I'll tell you why that helped me out a ton over Thanksgiving break. But anyways, I tried that in the training group. I only had 1 kid launch over Thanksgiving, and the parents called, whatever, and they didn't get anything. But I just complimented them. I was like, hey, I just love working with your son, Richard. He was awesome to work with. I did all those, like the tips that you gave. And later that night at like 8 p.m., his parents texted me and said, actually, we're going to go with the homemaker. What kind of deal can you give us? And I was like, yeah, like super excited. And that was one of my candidates' PRs. So that actually counts for like our January program because the way we do things. But he was really excited about that, and he's about to hit his second promotion now. And He's feeling really fired up about the job because his parents were against it and all that stuff. So that was really cool. But definitely doesn't hurt to add that for sure. I'm going to do that forever now. But first weekend PDI is typically the normal stuff, things like that. So it would say stuff like, hey, have you ever thought of management before? So I love asking on the first PDI call, hey, have you ever thought of management before? Whether their demo went well or not well. And this is typically towards the end, after you've done like the normal first PDI call type of thing, first weekend. But at the end, to like wrap up the call, I say, hey Nick, have you ever thought of, management before? And sometimes like, no, not really. And it's like, well, hey, the way you actually handled your first no sale, I'm really looking for people like you, people that have grit, people that know how to take no and keep going. And I know like you were an athlete, and I know, you run and all that stuff. So that's probably where you got a lot of that skill of like being able to like, face adversity. I think you'd be a great assistant manager one day. Obviously our staff's pretty full right now, but hey, let's talk about that sometime after your fast start. Okay. And just like planting that seed right on first weekend PDI. I can't tell you how many times when I promote people at Advanced Training key staff, they're like, oh my gosh. And like, they'll tell their friends and stuff like that. And their parents are all excited and whatnot. So whether they did well or not on their first one, always asking on first weekend PDI. And then sometimes if it's like a friend, like if it's a friend of theirs that already, works here, I'll even say, hey, your friend so-and-so on the assist manager squad, currently, how old are you again? And they're like, 18. It's like, your friend's 19 and they're actually currently training to run their own office for next summer. Like, that's why I asked you, have you thought about management? Because like, what if you ran your own office next summer? Like, you got the keys to your own office as like a 19-year-old. Can you believe how crazy that is? And you get like a big bonus right at the beginning of the summer to kind of help you start it. And there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it, but like, this is only for the ones that like their friends are currently in Leadership Academy. And then they're all like sold on it right afterwards. They're like, dude, tell me about your management training. They're like, I'm going to have my own office. I'm going to crush it and things like that. The next thing, so first weekend PDI, just to kind of get the thought, jogging. The second thing is 3K lunches. This is huge. This is something that John thinks has totally revolutionized the division and not having to be at his office as much. And this is a big nugget. When I was John's Dom, I really didn't think he was doing that much. Like he was really good at mastering of like making it feel like I was doing everything. I didn't even know he was doing these 3K lunches at first. Anybody that hit 3K after their fast start, it couldn't be within their fast start, but anytime after their fast start, anytime in the summer, he had these 3K lunches. Now I'm going to go over like the breakdown of a 3K lunch. But like I mentioned, these 3K lunches became part of how we did everything. So once he kind of explained what he was doing, and I was like getting all these kids that kept coming to the office, like randomly showing up for day like 2 or 3 of training. And I'm like, you were just in the area. They're like, oh, I just had lunch with John. And I'm like, what? And I asked John about it. He's like, oh yeah, this is something that I've been planning on doing. Just wanted to test it out a couple of times. And it was just incredible. So now it became part of our strategy. So on Mondays, he would ask me, hey, who hit 3K this week that I can take out to lunch? And he'd always make time Thursday and Friday while training was going on. So he knew once they came back to the office, he would like prep them to go back to the office, tell them about their lunch with John. It was a free stop in every single week for the pilot or for me, right? Where they would just talk about management and why they're excited and yada, yada, right? And it gave me a chance to ask questions in front of the training group. So it became part of our strategy is these 3K lunches. So every week, he did these. Almost 90% of the people that went to these 3K lunches by the end of the summer at least hit 6 to 10K. Every summer we in our division and even most of our region, we would have the most, 6 to 10Kers by the end of the summer in Leadership Academy, and we even had a lot that would get to, 20, 30, 40, 50K many, many times. So I've had at least in my career, I've had 5 or 6 40 to 50Kers just from, in a summer from these 3K lunches, so that was pretty cool. And so, anyways, that really affected our long-term retention and our PPR. And so here was the objective. Here's how the breakdown of the 3K lunches. So first is rapport. Second is like vision and goals. And then third is spewing the vision and like things like that. So first off is rapport. He would take them out to lunch, get to know them really well, because he's not the one who interviewed and trained them. So this is like one of the most critical parts. So he would get both vector and life goals, by the way. And hold on, I lost my spot here. So vector and life goals, he would get those in mind. So he would get these vector and life goals and keep them in mind. And then he would actually, once everybody at the lunch table, sometimes it was 2, sometimes I had 8 people at lunches with him, and he would let every single person go within the business and out of the business type goals. And he always started with the person that was like the highest in sales at that lunch, that was like most fired up. And they'd obviously affect the rest of the people's goals. And then he would keep those in mind based off of like what schools they wanted to go to and what they wanted to study. And then once he heard everybody's story, he would share a bunch of stories of people that he's trained in his 20 plus years of doing this. And every single one of them, whether it was a nursing major, an engineering major, or whatever it was, he tied into the business how working here this summer is going to impact their lives forever. And he would try to share the most recent results and goals and things like that.
Ryan, this is a group lunch once it hit 3K.
Anybody that hit 3K.
And how often do you do this?
But he would do it weekly.
Weekly, okay. So it might be a couple people, it might be more.
Yeah, sometimes it was 1.
Okay.
And sometimes it was 8. Like it depended on how I did in training and how many I launched and stuff like that. But it would be after their fast start too. So, and then there was a couple of weeks where it was like traveling for DVM meetings that he didn't do it. And then it would be, those were typically the bigger lunches when it was like 2 weeks went by and it's like, John, I've got like 10 people at 3K for you to take out. And he's like, great. And he was so excited. He's like, you're doing a great job. Keep that up. And that made me want to run training even better. So, but anyways, so after he got everybody to go around the room, share their, what their whys are and what they want to do in the future, he would cover why he wanted to spend more time with this group of people or with these specific people. And he would share the vision of the organization, the goals, and he would share a lot of my goals too and why I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And he would share the office and where we are and where we would like to be. So he's like, this is where we're at. Here's where we would like to be. And he would like spew this office vision. And then he would finish up with, lastly, these are some things that you can do around the office to help you get noticed for a leadership role in our office moving forward. So he would just plant some seeds of things to ask Ryan about. Hey, these are some things that you can do to help Ryan out. And he would go over like field training people. He would go over, things like stopping in the office just to help out sometimes, cutting rope and leather on day 3. He would just like do all these little things that he knew the pilot would sometimes forget to do, or things that he knew his pilot was weak at, that he would just like, he wouldn't say it that way, but he would just say, these are things that, you could really do to help out Ryan. And then I was like, oh my gosh, everybody's so helpful. And I had no idea at first when he was doing it. I was like, I didn't even know you knew to cut rope on day 3. And they're like, oh yeah, John said it would be a great idea to help you out. I'm like, fantastic. Like, this is awesome. Right. And so it was all those little things that helped it. He wasn't there, but he was there. His like presence in the office was there. So, and then after that, he would spew vision and build up the Dom. So he would say all of the accolades that the Dom has created and things like that. Here's some things to work on to become one of the best. Here's how you can help. Get to 10K as soon as possible. Come prepared to help out the Dom every single time you come into the office. And go big for push periods. Make sure you're thinking $10, $15, $20,000. I know you might only be at 3, 4, 5K, but you should be really thinking big about your push periods. Ryan's probably going to talk about this thing called the Summer Elevation Conference or SC2 or whatever time of the year it was. He always made sure he plugged that in. And you should ask Ryan about it. It's going to be the most amazing event ever. And he would sell that a little bit. And his lunches were typically 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half if there was a lot of them. And lastly, well, kind of not lastly when it comes to this, but having a consistent AM meeting every single week. I'm actually blown away with how inconsistent some offices are with their assistant manager and key staff programs. I actually found out for some of the offices, they don't even have a key staff program. And I'm like, what? So just having a consistent AM meeting. I have a one-page document that I can actually email out to everybody that has exactly what John and I cover in an AM meeting. It's really helpful to make them feel like they're actually a part of the team and decision-making to help improve results week to week. So it's literally like, write down everybody's names. What can we get them to? What are some contests we're going to have this week? And you just kind of go around the room with the assistant managers and make them feel like they get to decide on how the office is run every week. What's the theme of the meeting going to be this week? How do we motivate so-and-so? They were consistent. And so we walked through each person and how to get them going. And then once we talked about some of the newer people, then we said, all right, let's talk about the assistant manager sales. Like, what are you guys going to do? You can't let so-and-so beat you. And so then it becomes competitive, and they have higher expectations as assistant managers. Now, the agenda doesn't have to be exact. In fact, what I found is the first and the third week of each month, I run that exact meeting that John wrote. But then to kind of switch it up, to make it feel like it's not the same exact meeting every week, what I've decided to do that's really helped me is the other 2 weeks, I kind of have like a teaching topic. So we'll still do the whole, like, let's figure out what our sales goal and recruiting goal is for the week, but let's do a teaching topic for the last half hour. Things like 7 habits of highly effective managers, the 5 Ps of a great AM from Drew Frank, and how to how to become a great recruiting assistant. We'll even watch the ATB videos that Dane Espregard put together. We'll watch those together in the AM meeting and explain why recruiting is so important. And so that was like an every other week. So the first and the third was that exact meeting, just so we've made sure the beginning of the month starts off correct, in terms of sales, recruiting, and themes. But then also the other weeks we want to teach something. And what I learned from John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership is poor leaders cannot retain high potential candidates. Having a strategic, well thought out, planned meeting will help retain higher quality people. If not, they're going to eventually catch on that you're just throwing stuff together and they're going to leave. So that's what I think has really helped us retain the higher quality recruits as they move up in the Leadership Academy. Now for things not to do. This one's kind of funny. I could cover a bunch of things, but 3 main ones that stood out when it comes to retaining: how to respond to mistakes. These are things like base pay wasn't entered, or checks weren't sent up, or missing pace for the month, or car bonus for the month, like you didn't recruit enough, or skipping campus, like if your Dom's a year-round Dom, like you skipped campus, or day 1 of training and there's no blue books or training manuals, or not hitting recruiting goals, or even setting 0 PRs for the day, or showing up late to the office for an interview and your assistant manager is waiting out in the rain and calls John Wasserman to tell you that I'm not here, or forgetting a candidate in Niagara Falls and only realizing 4 hours into the drive, on your 8-hour drive home, that you left a candidate in Niagara Falls. Now that one's a little extreme, but I'm sure missing a bunch of those, big mess ups and things like they really screw up. But we've probably all done those at some point in our career, and we can laugh about them now. But at the time, how does the leader handle these, and what did it teach me about caring for my people? Here's what not to do. Never threaten to fire them or take away their pay. That is not a way to handle, creating a success in your organization. Threatening to fire and taking away pay, that trickles down to your assistant managers. And that's how they start treating their assistant managers. And that is not how you want your business run. Things like calling them names, belittling them, or making them feel stupid. It's okay to let them stew in their pain without calling them names. But it's not like name calling and things like that. Or even worse, never pretend like that big screw up never happened and let it slide. So that is not a good way to handle it either. Here are things to do. Here's what John does every single time that I've royally screwed up in my career. Always give the benefit of the doubt and ask to speak to them about something that came to your attention. Hey, Ryan, I wanted to talk about something that came to my attention. Would you mind having a quick chat? Do you have a couple of minutes right now? And he would never infringe on my schedule. Like if I had to do something, he goes, great. Well, you definitely need to call me by later tonight. Okay, can I count on you? Great. We need to talk about something. Okay, great. And he would ask clarifying questions on the subject. and hear their side of the story. Always take ownership on the first offense. Hey, I apologize. I apologize if I wasn't clear about ... Explain how the situation affects multiple parties. For example, hey, if you forgot to send up checks on Monday, here's what happens. A customer doesn't get their Cutco that week. Then they cancel the order. Then your sales rep, Johnny, right? He's expecting a certain amount of money on his paycheck. And then he finds out that his manager forgot to send up the checks for the week, or they forgot to submit base pay. How would you feel if it was your check? What if I didn't show up on Monday to pay you, and you didn't hear from me all week, and I just avoided you, and you texted me Tuesday and texted me Wednesday, said, hey, what about my pay? How would you feel? Would you ever trust me ever again? How do you think they feel right now? How do you think that customer feels when they were super excited? And he always was really good at not making me feel stupid, but putting myself in the shoes of others and letting me stew in that while he just stared at me. And having that disappointment. He goes, well, here's how they're going to feel. The customer's upset, the sales rep is upset, I'm disappointed, and you feel guilty. So here's what I expect moving forward. And then yada, yada, yada. Are we clear? Now, never break them down without building them back up again. That is the biggest mistake. Never break them down and then leave them in pieces and then say, all right, I'll see you later for the day. Build them back up after you break them down. I know you didn't have some hidden evil agenda, like you meant to do this. Like, I know you didn't mean to not send up the checks for the week. I know you didn't mean to forget, but this is really important. I know you're a good person, but let's keep it that way, because the first time, if it's a mistake, hey, we know you're a good person. But if you let this consistently happen, that says a lot about your character, and I've got to believe that you're a good person. So, because if this does happen again, we're going to have a much different conversation next time. But do you have any questions for me? Cool. Anything I could do for you? Awesome. Well, hey, other than that, you're doing a fantastic job. You've got this. Keep rocking. And then, he would go over what the goal is for the day and things like that. And I'm not going to explain the Niagara story. That's if you're interested in that one, just ask me about it later. So that was a big one. But the second example of things not to do. So as a DVM, you do a lot of traveling, and the office is run by a pilot, AMs, whatnot. So when you're traveling in your way, how do you respond if you go away and the office falls apart, sales go down, recruiting goes down, etc.? But here's how not to respond. You don't want to come back and make them feel stupid, or else they're never going to want to run your office while you're away again, because they know you're the one that pays the bills. And they're going to be like, F this dude, right? Or F this lady or whatever. I had a really tough week. You don't even know, right? Again, doing very similar things, asking clarifying questions, things that you expect next time. But here's the most important thing, is always appreciate them for allowing you the flexibility to live your lifestyle. I just wanted to say, the number wasn't as important. I'm never going to judge you based off some number, okay? I'm sure you had some tough weeks and things like that. I really want you to make sure next time this is different, but I do want to make sure that I appreciate you for allowing me to go on vacation. Like that meant a lot to me. I was really looking forward to this vacation, and the fact that you were able to step up and take ownership. And I know we didn't, grow like we wanted to, but one day when you have a staff, and he would explain why he does it this way. One day when you have your own staff and they do exactly what you just did, you don't want to kill them, because then it's going to be even harder to go away next time. But you can always teach people, right? If they're allowing you the flexibility of going on vacation, then that's worth it. And lastly, to wrap up the story portion, the way you treat people matters. So hopefully you can gather throughout all of the stories and my experience working with WAS, that the way you treat people trickles down through the rest of your organization. Even if you don't think it is, even if you try to say, keep this between us or yada, yada, the way you treat your pilot or dom is how they're going to treat their staff. If you train them well, they'll train their people well. If you reprimand them the right way, they'll reprimand their people the right way. When you treat your people with respect and dignity and not belittle them because they royally screwed up or don't know what they're doing, they just don't know any better. Isn't that why we do what we do? We're in the business of helping others, so I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys about the things that we do for people and all the amazing stories, but always be thinking about them and their future and how what you're about to talk to them about is going to impact their future forever. And always explain that you're coming from a viewpoint of here's what's going to help you and never what's going to help yourself, always what's going to help them. And the quote I wanted to end with that I always love from Al DiLeonardo is, "We change lives through knives." Thank you. There's my message.
Hey, man, awesome. I'll give you a big round of applause for that. It's great stuff. Definitely the most content heavy out of the three we've had so far. We've got 4 pages, I think is where I'm at right now, with notes and liners and just some fun stories. I know I stepped out a couple of times, but just really appreciate you preparing that message, putting the effort in, and having it. Most of my questions, if I had them, you went back to answering, which was really powerful. And I think for me, what was really resonating was that a lot of those things I've done before, but not all the time, right? Like I might have done them once, but I didn't do them all the time. And I know that at this point with timing, there's not a lot of other feedback, but some really good stuff. So thank you for putting in the time, the dedication. Thank you for reaching out to many of your mentors and really just coming up with a great message. I know it can be intimidating to be maybe the newbie at the bottom and talking to what you would consider some of the veterans, but hopefully that's a great experience for you too, to be able to move forward in your career. So thanks again.